brief question. Thank you for including raise the age in your testimony and as being one of the issues that you're intending to focus on. I'm just wondering if you have looked at some of the ramifications of raise the age as it relates to the community where these young people generally will come from now and will be hopefully able to remain. What do we need to do to make sure that we're able to support them and sustain them being out of the system?
Right. There's going to be a big influx of 16 and 17-year-olds back into the child welfare system. So those services that will be needed to turn things around for their lives
yes.
Need to be in place. That's why the 100% funding by the state is so vital. And that extends through all types of preventive services. So as we move forward, it's still a little bit unclear at this point how that's going to play out. But our association is very concerned with that the state does their part and fulfills their obligation to meeting all the preventive and all the other services that this group of kids are going to need.
So I would hope that one of the things that will happen based on the discussion around raise the age is that we begin to work on a plan for accommodating this new policy in the best interest of the children that we're trying to help.
Absolutely.
So I look forward to working with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one comment. Some of us sit here day in, day out through all of these hearings, looking around. Diane Savino and I win the award, I think, so far. So two themes that you actually hit on in your testimony without necessarily realizing you were hitting on them was two themes I've seen from throughout all the hearings. One, the state continues not to invest in its infrastructure at the local level or recognize that local governments are actually the guys who, the women and the men who actually deliver the service to the real people. And two, we keep balancing our budget by putting more and more of the costs on you. So I appreciate that your testimony laid out on a number of different categories how we have reduced the formula match to the counties, and again, even more so to the city of New York. You also pointed that out in your testimony, that we keep just shifting more of the burden to you all and pretending that we're reducing our funding streams or costs for these programs. We're not reducing the cost of delivering the services. We're just making you pay more of it. And you, of course, have your own caps to deal with. So I appreciate your going through and reminding us all of some of the history of what used to be 50-50 matches and are now radically changed. So I appreciate your reminding us all of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Our next, excuse me.
Want to do it?
Sure.
Okay.
And our next testifier, Jim Purcell from the Council of Families and Child Care Agencies. And if people want to move down, if they're following their schedule, after that will be Renee Smith, New York State Children's Alliance, followed by Stephanie Gendel of the Citizens Committee for Children. Hi.
Hi. Thank you. I am Jim Purcell. I'm the CEO of the Council of Family and Child Caring Agencies. We have about 100 nonprofit agencies across the state that provide foster care, family preventive support services, juvenile justice services, and adoption. And we appreciate this opportunity to speak with you today. I will actually stop in mid-sentence at 5 minutes because I can't imagine the last 2 weeks that most of you have spent here. So I think that I just want to outline. I'm going to skip the testimony. You got it. I trust you're all going to read it, you know, because you may not be able to sleep tonight, so I recommend it. We have a couple of key priorities related to foster care this year. One is we so appreciate the support that the legislature gave us last year after the budget in getting the first rate increases for foster care in 7 years. They were greatly appreciated. it was 2%, but as people on our boards of directors said, at least they were reminded that the state actually cares. And they had begun to lose hope in that. And so that was vitally important. This year, our first request, frankly, is that you continue to do that. We recognize that there's the human service COLA is back in the budget this year, but that was not a typo. I thought it was a typo. I told my members it was a typo, but it's actually 0.002. On a $35,000 annual salary, that's $70 a year, which is about $2.57 in every paycheck, which may or may not get you a cup of coffee once every 2 weeks. So while we appreciate it, we need to begin to restore the salaries that we've lost over the last 7 years when there were no adjustments in the rates, which brings us to the minimum wage. As others here have testified, the nonprofit agencies are concerned about the impact of the minimum wage and how they'll fund it for their staff. But there can be no doubt that we support the increases. In our case, virtually all the families that we work with are poor or very poor. How could we say, no, we shouldn't increase the minimum wage when we're working with families who can't pay their rent? They run out of food stamps and they stop feeding their kids because maybe the food pantry said, don't come back here again. And it's our job in our preventive services to work with those families and say, no, you can go back there again. But that's our answer. The refrigerator breaks. We can't help replace it. So the families we work with who are working, and many of them are, deserve to be paid a salary on which they can try to support their families. At the same time, we have a lot of workers who are making way under $15 a year. We're currently doing some analysis with our 100 members to see what they think it'll cost. I think the cost in the first year will be relatively minimal because right now, although with the fact that the fast food workers just got their first minimum wage, we're now competing directly dollar for dollar with Ben & Jerry's and Dunkin' Donuts for the people who will care for our kids who have some pretty serious problems. We too are looking for some additional capital investment. Because of all those rate freezes over the last 7 years, we've deferred a lot of maintenance. Our lengths of stay for kids in residential care are getting shorter, which means we're moving more and more 15 and 16 and 17 and 19-year-old kids through buildings which are quite old, and kids that age, the buildings and the furniture pay a price, and so we need to reinvest in that. And finally, we're looking for $1 million to begin to try to support our workers in getting degrees, a bachelor's degree for some of our child care staff, a master's degree for some of our caseworkers, and for some loan forgiveness. So $1 million is just a way to start this, I think. Child welfare is sort of a entry-level position for people coming out of school, out of high school with an associate's degree, like the senator here who's done so well. But they spend a couple years with us. They've just developed the ability to gain the trust of some of these kids we're working with. And then they say, look, I just have to leave. My $300 a month student loan bill is just not something I can pay when I'm making $33,000 a year. There are several other pieces in the budget that I want to reference. There's the governor included. We are thrilled with language that would create some protection for our foster parents and child care workers who last year you required that they begin to use a reasonable and prudent parenting standard. That means not saying no to everything a kid asks for, like can I go on a sleepover with all the rest of the girls in my class because it's Judy's birthday, and we say no, you can't because we need to do an SCR clearance on their parents, or I can't play on a school soccer team. We need a little bit of protection here, or that language is going to turn out not to mean very much, as there'll be lawsuits because somebody will get hurt playing soccer, and then there'll be a lawsuit about it. And we need to support these volunteers in doing that. And I'm going to stop, although I have a number of other things to talk to you about.
Liz?
Senator Diane Savino.
Thank you. So, Jim, thank you for your testimony. And, you know, I'm not going to harp on the issue of the minimum wage and the effect on the agencies because I'm getting tired of hearing myself think, but I'm just startled in your testimony where you talk about the starting salary for many of your field staff at $11.33 an hour. That is absolutely outrageous. When I started 25 years ago, my starting salary was $24,670, which worked out to $15.77 an hour.
Right.
Nonprofit agencies at the time were paying caseworkers about $4,000 less than the city was.
Right.
This gap, though, has gotten enormous between the nonprofit sector, and your agencies are the ones who are providing foster care. The city doesn't do foster care anymore.
None.
That's a different argument, different discussion to have. But I'm very curious about the effect, and I asked Sheila Poole about the effect of the opioid abuse crisis and the rise in heroin and the number of cases that your agencies are now dealing with, doing preventive services, having to make hard decisions about very complicated drug problems with families, and how can you recruit and retain people if this is the only thing you can pay them?
It's an increasing challenge. Sheila spoke, I thought, really well to the fact that where we've seen increases in foster care, the foster care numbers are at record low numbers. I've been doing this for...
That's because of very good preventive services.
Because preventive services, but now our preventive services workers are working with families that used to be in foster care. And you're right, that where the parents are using opiates, that creates a huge challenge. I just last week, I asked 10 of our New York City executive directors if they too were seeing the impact of heroin and opiates, because we hear it upstate all the time. Interestingly, I only had 10 people in the room, and the answer back was not a huge impact that we're seeing in Brooklyn or the Bronx, but a big impact in Queens and Staten Island. I don't know what that means yet. It's not a scientific study. It was just a question that I asked. And the people who work in those two boroughs both responded that they're seeing more and more of the impact.
Well, unfortunately, Staten Island is earned the dubious distinction of being the heroin capital of the state right now. But I do think we're going to see a corresponding rise in placements or more intensive social services. So I think, we've got to make sure that we provide enough assistance to your agency so that you can do that kind of work. I'm very happy to see you include the idea of a child welfare worker tuition forgiveness. As you know, I think it was about 6 years ago?
Yeah.
We started the social work forgiveness loan program. It's been somewhat successful because, again, it's hard to keep social workers in the public sector or even in the nonprofit sector because this pay is not a lot, and the tuition for graduate school is about $40,000 on average. Right. So, and the starting salary for a social worker in these fields is about $40,000 on average.
Well, actually, with master's degrees, it's still lower than 40 right now.
Right. In the city, for a city social worker, it's about 40. In your agencies, it's lower. Yeah. And I do agree we should try and add child welfare workers into this, and I look forward to talking to you about ways to kind of expand this tuition loan forgiveness program, because it is important that we attract people to this field. And if we can't raise the salary, maybe we should lower their debt. So,
the state has funded loan forgiveness programs for engineers, for farmers, for 10 or 12 different professions, and this would be an opportunity to keep some of these people who've spent a couple of years, whose heart is still in the work with these kids, but who just can't do it. And I'm glad you mentioned raise the age, because Senator Montgomery will get mad that I didn't mention it, but it was the next thing on my list, Senator.
Okay. But on the loan forgiveness, since we already have one created for social workers, it might be easier to expand it from social workers to child welfare workers as well, so we don't have to create a whole new program. I mean, I think we should talk about that.
Absolutely. Our proposal is very much modeled after the programs that already exist, and I agree with you. We don't need a separate mechanism if the mechanisms already exist.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly?
Yeah, Mr. Purcell, good to see you. And
good to see you again.
I'd like to thank you for all of your advice and guidance that's stemmed from an Assembly roundtable that we did together.
Thank you for asking.
No, my pleasure. So wanted to also express some similar sentiments that we are very happy with the governor putting in the reasonable and prudent parenting standard in the executive budget. That's a fantastic step. And just want to say I hear you on the rate increases. And understand the particular nature of how that would impact your agencies and your workers, who we desperately need to keep providing the services that they are providing. And look forward to continuing to work with you on issues like MSAR and some of the others that you raised. But I just want to say a personal thank you. I don't have any questions.
I think we're on speed dial.
We are on speed dial, which is great, and I appreciate the advice.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Senator Montgomery.
I didn't see in your testimony where the raise the age is, but I'll just ask very quickly. Could we get a list or some idea of which of your members actually are in the, I guess, the front end of Raise the Age issue? In other words, trying to look at building the infrastructure in the community. Yes, diversion. Yes, exactly. Could we get some sense? Could I get that from you?
Yeah, not right at this moment, I can't, but we will get it back to you.
I would appreciate that because we're going to need a lot more of that discussion.
Yeah, and they report that they've been quite successful in keeping a number of these kids safely at home without recommitting offenses, working with their families. So a number of evidence-based models being used in those programs as well.
And families really are going to need a lot of support with that, I think.
Yeah.
And the last part of my question is on the whole issue of foster care. Where are we in terms of supporting young people who are out of foster care but still need housing, need a lot of supports? They're not ready to just go off and be on their own.
I think that's one of the huge issues. And, again, even as we all begin to try to work across lines, not be so siloed, the fact is a number of kids stay in foster care until they're 21. New York State has always allowed that. I'm very proud of that. Other states are still struggling with it in some cases. But whether you just throw kids out at 18 or you tell them they got to leave at 21, somebody just told me that the average age across the state, all income levels for children becoming independent of their parents is closer to 26 or 27 now. And yet these kids who don't have that parental resource behind them, we get them an apartment, we get them a job, but typically there's 2 or 3 kids sharing an apartment, and all it takes is one of them losing their job, and then they don't pay the rent, and then they lose the apartment, and then the second one loses his or her job. So we've got to find a better way for some transitional services. Yes. Nobody wants to keep these kids in care after they're 21. That is never part of our agenda. But cutting off all the supports. Yes. So in many ways, and I'm no expert on supported housing, but using supported housing, perhaps tying in the child welfare caseworker support into that so that we can help these kids stay on track and frankly help them with those short-term emergencies. I mean, how many kids would not end up back in a homeless shelter if in fact when the third kid in the apartment lost his job and couldn't pay the rent, we were somehow able to subsidize that until either somebody got him another job or we moved another young person in there with the job. We end up with 3 kids in homeless shelters because of one unforeseen, although job losses and the fire in an apartment is not so unforeseen. But that's where those numbers come from. We're not discharging kids to homeless shelters. We're discharging them to apartments. But one of my own execs just showed me data that said that the failure rate in NYCHA for former foster care kids is higher than for any other group, any other segment of their population that they target. Yeah. We got to figure out how to target. I mean, now that we know that, let's do something with that information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly.
Chairwoman Lupardo.
Yes, thanks. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
In your testimony, you said that there are 60 residential foster care programs in need of capital investment.
We surveyed, like Michelle mentioned a few minutes ago, we surveyed 4 of our agencies last fall who were working with us on a work group about if they could apply for all the funds they needed for capital, which is mostly deferred maintenance, but it also includes the Justice Center often indicates cases and then tells the agencies they ought to purchase cameras to put in public areas. A number of our agencies have been able to do that. Some have not. They don't have the money. So they might want to put cameras in their public areas, which tends to make the kids and the staff safer. A number of our residential programs were built with a cottage that had 2 kids in a bedroom or maybe 3. We're not serving kids today in residential care who we should be putting 2 and 3 in a room. So they need to not build a new building, but they need to remodel the cottage that they're using so that we get maybe 8 or 9 single rooms instead of 4 or 5 double or triple rooms. We surveyed 4 agencies. They came up with $9 million of requests. So our request was for $15 million this year, $15 million next year. That would be 30. If I just extrapolated that out, I would have been saying 120 million, but I'm willing to recognize that perhaps the state wouldn't think some of the things our agencies identified were such high priorities. A little competition isn't the worst idea in the world, but the 50 million last year across all of human services is just so far from being enough. We need an increase in that. Let me say, in response to some concerns I've heard, whether that was 15 million for the child welfare system or whether that was 100 million for human services, I defer to your judgment on that. We just need some money, access to some money to improve these programs.
Do you know how many of the 60 applied for the $50 million?
I don't know that yet.
Okay.
Actually, I think the proposals were just due. They extended it a couple times. The Human Service Council mentioned a couple of the problems. You know, you might have gotten a $20,000 in HEAL grant 3 years ago, and that disqualified you from filing here, which doesn't really make any sense.
So have you ever had a capital improvement funding line in the budget?
No.
This would be something new?
The only thing that's related to us at all in that regard were many of our schools were written into DASNY and got DASNY-funded new school buildings 15 and 20 years ago or so. That's been the only capital funding for any of these residential
So how
programs.
have they been doing any capital improvements?
Try to raise some money and name a building after somebody who wants to give you some money. We don't have a lot of people who want to give us that kind of money.
Thank you.
I want to thank you. Oh, excuse me. We have one more. Roxanne Purcell.
Good afternoon. One quick question for you. I see that you're advocating for many things in the foster care system, but I just don't see anything specifically about kinship care, which is a growing issue.
It's part of the foster care system. It's funded through foster care. In fact, too much of it's funded through foster care right now. The kin gap, which is built, has grown more slowly than either we or at least New York City would have expected to. And ACS is now working with our agencies to try to clear some of the hurdles out of the way for kin gap, which would allow some of the kids in kinship foster care to be permanently discharged to their relatives, where the conclusion is that that family no longer needs caseworkers and all of that. The problem from a structural perspective is when that got approved several years ago, the funding was stuck into the foster care block grant, which was a fine short-term expedient. The problem is that as it grows, that means that a larger and larger part of what should be funding foster care is funding families that are now out of foster care. There's a separate appropriation for adoption subsidies. We ought to move the kin gap program into the same funding stream as the adoption subsidies and stop. Frankly, it takes money away from the counties again, the point that was just made with regard to the prior speaker.
Thank you.
I want to thank, excuse me, another assembly member?
No, we are good.
Okay, I want to thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony today. And I just want to throw in, when Senator Montgomery was discussing the issues and you were answering about ending up putting kids from foster care into the homeless shelters, I've always thought we should just pay for them to go to college.
Actually, one of the things we're supporting
It's got to be a lot cheaper than any of these other
absolutely,
ridiculous
and there's
stories.
you funded, this is amazing to me, but you funded last year $1.5 million for FISA, the Fostering Youth Success in College. That money was included in the governor's budget this year. And those of us who follow state budgets know that it doesn't matter much who the governor is. They seldom put in what the legislature has added. I see that as they saw this was a great idea, too. I think everybody did. I think the group putting that together has done a fantastic job. They're back asking for an increase to support some additional kids this year, and we support that as well. But you're absolutely right. We could get these kids into college instead of homeless shelters. We could get our workers to stay longer on the job than the kids stay in foster care. The kids will stay a lot shorter because they won't keep changing workers. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Our next testifier is Renee Smith, Chair of the Board, New York State Children's Alliance. And these are ad changes. I didn't change your paper.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. And as I said, thanks for this opportunity. My name is Renee Smith Rotundo. I am the chair of the New York State Children's Alliance, which is the membership organization for New York State's 40 child advocacy centers, and I am here representing our membership to ask again for your support for the critical work that we do with child victims of abuse. But first I want to thank this body for its strong support of our programs. In 2014, you added a legislative appropriation of $2.57 million to the state budget that year that greatly helped our programs provide immediate responses and quality services to our child victims. And then last year, you again added that same amount to the 2015-2016 budget. So we are really grateful that you recognize the importance of the work that we do in our communities and the children and families that we serve. This year, NISCA submitted a formal request to the governor's office to, at a minimum, include that funding in this year's budget. And unfortunately, the proposed 2016-2017 budget does not include those funds. So the result is that we are here again to ask for your support in maintaining state funding for CACs at least the level of last year's funding, which was $7.779 million. You have been very generous to our mission over the years. And in a very real sense, what we ask you to invest in is really the children of our state. We work with one of the most vulnerable populations, abused children. And last year we saw approximately 18,000 children in our 40 programs, 18,000. We understand that as you have to decide where to put your state dollars, that you need to consider return on your investments. So I just wanted to take my time here to run through a few things that you could expect to get from investing in our child advocacy centers. The first thing is that we provide a proven, effective approach to child abuse cases by employing a collaborative, multidisciplinary approach to these cases. We have team members that are specially trained in all types of services in all aspects of these cases, and the team works collaboratively to provide an immediate response and in a safe and comfortable environment for the children and the families who are coming in having been subjected to trauma. Secondly, what you can expect in return for the investment is programs that now use a single state-of-the-art case tracking system that allows us to monitor our cases, collect data, analyze that data, determine if there are patterns, trends, gaps, and then adjust our programs accordingly. Third, we have centers that now have the ability to survey our clients for their feedback on the services that we provide through the use of a web-based outcome measurement system that allows all of our programs to see how they're responding to their community's needs and adjust accordingly. And you can also expect that we share all of these program dollars with a myriad of agencies in our community that have an obligation to respond to a child abuse case. So your support provides cutting-edge training and equipment to prosecutors, to law enforcement, to child protection, child protective workers, to victim advocates, mental health and medical health providers. We share our dollars with our very dedicated team members, and the result is that we have a better, more immediate response when we need to respond to a case. And further, we are, and I'm out of time. I'm pretty much reading.
If
do you want me to continue?
Sure, a little bit, but if you could summarize, that would be helpful.
Okay, I'll just finish by saying our programs are really expert at responding to trauma, and that was, and there's a whole section in my testimony about when you are able to address trauma at a young age and how much that helps a person later on in life in terms of health, and that we're not re-traumatizing children in our programs because we provide the type of multidisciplinary sensitive approach that's very helpful to them. I could go on. The returns, I think, are obvious for the investment in our programs. We'd ask you to continue to support us the way you have been. We are very, very appreciative. We do this hard work every single day, and we see these children every single day. They come in traumatized, as do their families, and we could really use the support, the financial support from the state to be able to continue what we do.
Thank you very much, and I couldn't agree more. We have child advocacy centers in Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, and Allegheny counties, and I've been personally involved with their efforts. And I remember they brought in a speaker several years ago, and it was, I can't recall her name, but it was one of the most notorious child abuse cases from the 1950s. It was very shocking. And she was tied in a closet, severely abused. Her brother was tied to the shower and was already dead, but they used to sing to one another to communicate. But she said after she was finally discovered, they had nowhere to take her except to the local police station, and she ended up spending the night in a jail cell. So if you can imagine the horror that she had been through and the fact that that's where she ended up because there was nowhere to put her, really is something that takes your breath away. So I want to thank you for what you and your member organizations do to take children who are abused into a safe, home-like setting, multidisciplinary, as you said, healthcare, law enforcement, counselors, all working together on behalf of the children. And I think it's an extraordinarily compelling and important program. So I want to thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you. And I just want to say I was going to include stories, but I knew there wasn't time, so yours was perfect.
Okay. No, we're good.
We're all set. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Stephanie Gendel, Esquire. Oh, I'm sorry. Valmanette, if you had a question, are you sure?
I just only wanted to identify the fact that the New York State Children's Alliance is located in my district. 320 Schermerhorn Street is around the corner from my office.
That is the
welcome.
Child Advocacy Center.
Yes.
In your district, and
Just wanted to acknowledge
Jenna
that.
is here, but
Who
would
is
not
here?
come down with me. Who runs that Child Advocacy
Who is here from
Center.
there?
Jenna
Raise your hand.
Giaconolis.
Oh,
There in
okay.
the
There in
back.
the corner.
Hello.
She's on
Welcome.
the board as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next is Stephanie Gendel, Esquire, Associate Executive Director for Policy and Government Relations from the Citizens Committee for Children of New York.